Okay, so this is the quadratic formula and solving using the quadratic formula. So first off, we have this equation right here, and if I said, how do we solve this equation? Hopefully you jump right on and be like, I know how to solve that. We already learned how to do that. I have to get it equal to 0, which it already is. It's a quadratic. I have to get it equal to 0, which it already is. Then I look for a GCF. There is no greatest common factor. So I say, okay, I need two terms that multiply to give me a times c, which is 10, and add to give me b, which is 7. Those two terms are 5 and 2, and then I have to divide those two terms by a, which is 1. So I have x plus 5 times x plus 2 equals 0. Then I set each factor equal to 0 and solve, and I get two solutions. X equals -5 and x equals -2. Right, so we just factored this. Woo! Okay, so now let's do over here. How do we solve this? Now, hopefully you're saying at first the same thing. You're saying, okay, this is a quadratic. I know how to solve it. I get it equal to 0 to see if I can try to factor it. So, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I should say the first thing I do is I say, can I solve it by square rooting? The answer to that is no, because there's an x squared and an x. If there's an x squared and an x, you can't solve by square rooting. So next one I ask myself is, can I factor it? So I look for a GCF. There is no GCF. So then I go ahead and make my x off to the side, and I say, okay, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give me a times c, which is 3, and add to give me b, which is 5. And I say, wow, they don't have this. This is not factorable, okay? Now, I don't want to write this as not factorable. I'll put question mark, question mark, question mark, because I don't ever want you to write not factorable down, because if you don't, there's something else you can do. So, previously we solved quadratic equations by factoring, but what if we can't factor the given quadratic? Well, the quadratic formula can be used to help solve any quadratic equation. So what is the quadratic formula? So first off, you have to have your quadratic in standard form. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And then here's how you get it. Okay, well, it says that right above, right here. Okay. X is going to be equal to, you're going to take so first off, what you might want to do is, this is going to be a fraction. Okay, so don't put x equals in the fraction. It's on the other side. All right, so in the numerator, you have the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take all the, you're going to have to take a, so here's a, and you're going to have to plug it in there and there. Then you're going to have to take b, and you're going to have to plug it in there and there. And then you're going to have to take c, and you're going to have to plug it in there. Okay? Then you have to simplify it. So the hard part comes, not the hard part, but the part that if I just said do it on your own would be simplifying it. So I'm going to teach you how to simplify it so you're good at it. So you must memorize this formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There are a bunch of ways to memorize it. So there is a video that I will post on Schoology that if you need help memorizing it, you can. It's to this tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, I think. I refuse to sing on the screencast, so I will not be doing that. Okay, but you're going to notice that I don't look back up at the formula. If anything, I'll write it down again. So it says, let's try this. So first off, let's look at this one and say, can I solve it by factoring? Okay, the answer is yes, you can. But what I want to do is I want to show you that factoring is so much faster after we're done if you can factor. But let's say that I go to do my homework tonight and I say, I'm going to do using quadratic formula and everything. It's going to take forever, okay? We're going to do a quadratic formula and then we're going to do it using factoring. We're going to say, wow, factoring is so much better. So I should always check to see if it's factorable first. Okay, so first off, I have to know what A is. A is 1, oops, I can just write it over here, right? A is 1, B is 7, C is 10. So once again, you're going to do x equals the opposite of b. So the opposite of 7 is negative 7. Plus or minus the square root of, in parentheses squared, you need to put b inside of there, so 7. Minus 4 times, and then I put down 2 sets of parentheses. A and C go in there, 110. All over. Make sure that your fraction bar doesn't go past the equal sign here. And make sure the 7 goes over it, or over the fraction bar. And then 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, now I need to clean this up. So you're going to write down x equals the negative 7 plus or minus, the square root goes back, all over, and then you're going to simplify everything else. Here's what you're going to simplify. You're going to do 7 squared. That's 49. You are also going to do, let me get a different color here, these 3 numbers, including the negative 4, multiplied. Negative 4 times 1 times 10 is negative 40. All over, and then the easy part, multiplying these 2. Okay? Then what you're going to do is you are going to simplify this. So you have x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 9 all over 2. Okay, now the square root of 9 is simplifiable. We know what the square root of 9 is. It's 3. So that's how right away I know that I could have factored it because I got a number that I knew there. So I have x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 9 is 3 all over 2. Now I can get my 2 answers. Okay, x equals. I need to do negative 3 plus, sorry, that's a negative 7. Negative 7 plus 3, which is negative 4. And then divide it by 2. If you're using a calculator, make sure you do negative 7 plus 3, enter, divided by 2, which is negative 2. Then I have to do, let me change this to a different color here, negative 7 minus 3, which is negative 10, divided by 2, negative 5. So I have 2 solutions, negative 2 and negative 5. Now if you look at this work, versus, hey, is it factorable? Do I know 2 numbers that multiply to give me 10 and add to give me 7, 5 and 2? That's x plus 5 times x minus 2 equals 0. So x plus 5. So x plus 5 times x plus 2 equals 0. So I get x equals negative 5, x equals negative 2. Factoring is faster, right? Factoring is so much faster. But what happens when it's not factorable? So now for the rest of these, it won't be factorable. So we're going to check, just in case I'm wrong. Okay, so let's look at this one. So I say, all right, this is a quadratic with an x squared and an x. Can I solve by square rooting? No, it has an x squared and an x. Absolutely not. So I'm going to try to factor. Is it equal to 0? Yes. All right, so is there a GCF? 1? Nope, that's nothing. So I say, okay, do I know 2 numbers that multiply to give me 3 and add to give me 5? And the answer is no. This is the one that was up here, right? So notice we got this. Factoring was faster, so I don't know why I did this because it's already up there. So how are we going to do this? We're going to use the quadratic formula for sure. Okay, I need to know what A is. 1. B is 5. C is 3. All right, so here we go. X equals the opposite of B, so negative 5, plus or minus the square root of, in parentheses squared, you're going to put what B is, which is 5, minus 4 times, in parentheses, you're going to put A and C. A is 1, C is 3, all over 2 times A. All right, once again, simplifying. I'm going to write down x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of over. Okay, so I can simplify this. What's 5 squared? 25. Next, you're going to multiply these 3 numbers. Negative 4 times 1 times 3 is negative 12. Then you're going to do 2 times 1, which is 2. Now you're going to simplify this. 25 minus 12 is 13. So I have x equals, x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 13 all over 2. Okay, now I have to ask myself, can I simplify root 13? Just like I asked myself, can I simplify root 9? So I do not know the square root of 13, and there are no perfect squares that go into 13. So this is my final answer. This is it. Okay, my exact answer is x equals -5 plus or minus root 13 all over 2. Now also I'm going to ask you for rounded answers. So for that you're going to need a calculator. Let me pull up my calculator. I also have yours out to make sure you're following along here. Okay, so my first answer, my first decimal answer I'm going to get from doing -5 plus root 13, enter. -5 plus root 13, enter. And then I have to divide it by 2. Divided by 2, enter. And that gives me, it says the nearest hundredth, which is 2 decimal places. So -0.70. Okay. And then I also have to do -5 minus root 13. Enter. Divided by 2. Enter. And I get -4.30. X equals -4.30. There's my 2 answers. Okay, but I'm going to ask you for this and this. You're going to need both. All right, let's try a few more here. Here is example 3. So I want to first say, can I solve it by square rooting? The answer is no, because there's an x squared and an x. Can I factor it? Let's try it, because it'd be less work. 2 numbers that multiply to give me -2 and add to give me -6. Nope, not going to happen. So then I say, okay, I have to use the quadratic formula. A is 2, B is -6, C is -1. So now I'm going to use the quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of B. What's the opposite of -6? +6. Plus or minus the square root of B in parentheses. So notice I put down the parentheses squared first, and then I throw in the -6. Minus 4 times 2 sets of parentheses. A is 2, C is -1. 2, -1, all over 2 times A, which is 2. All right, I got to clean this up. So I have x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of, and you get these 2 numbers, this and this. -6 squared is +36, because -6 times -6 is 36. Also, please realize that this is not what it says. That is -36. This is what it says. This is 36, positive. Okay, so now I need to know what -4 times 2 times -1 is. -4 times 2 times -1 is +8. All over 2 times 2 is 4. Now I need to add those two. X equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 8 is 44 all over 4. All right, just like the last one, I have to ask myself, do I know the square root of 44? I do not know the square root of 44, but I can simplify it. So I have to simplify it. We know how to simplify radicals. My perfect squares, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, so on and so forth. Now I stopped there because 44 is under 49, so I don't have to go any farther. 36 doesn't go in there, 25 doesn't go in there, 16 doesn't go in there, 9 doesn't go in there, but 4 does. So I'm going to say that 4 goes in there how many times? 11 times. So root 44 can simplify down to 2 root 11. So let's do that. X equals 6 plus or minus 2 root 11 all over 4. Now there is one more step that you have to do, and we didn't have to do it on the last one, and I'll show you why after we're done doing it. This is still simplifiable because the fraction itself is simplifiable. You need to look at these 3 numbers right here. You need to ask yourself, is there anything that goes into all 3 of those? There is a number that goes into all 3 of those, and that's 2. So I'm going to divide them all by 2. excuse me. 2 goes in here 3 times, 2 goes in here once, 2 goes in here twice. So now I can write my final answer. X equals 3 plus or minus, it's 1 root 11, but you can just write root 11 because that's 1 root 11 also, all over 2. That's my final answer. Now let's get the answers to the nearest hundredth. I'm going to do 3 plus root 11, enter, divided by 2, enter, and I get x equals 3.16. And then I'm also going to do 3 minus root 11, enter. Oops, I forgot the root 11. Go to root 11, enter, divided by 2, enter. And I get negative 0.16. X equals negative 0.16. Now let's look back and see why I didn't have to do it on the last one. I'm going to use the highlighter in yellow so you can see. I'll highlight the numbers. They were negative 5, 2, and this was a 1. Since I knew that was a 1 already, I knew it wasn't simplifiable. Okay? All right. Next one. So notice I'm taking away steps. Like I'm taking away like write down A, B, and C. Like you can just label them above. Like this is A, this is B, this is C if you need to. Give the exact value and round your answers to the nearest hundredth. So this is how your test would look. It would just say solve. It's not going to tell you by factoring or using quadratic formula. So first I say, can I solve by square rooting? There's an x squared and an x, so no. So now I say, can I solve by factoring? So I say, okay, do I know two numbers that multiply to give me 2 and add to give me 8? No, I don't, so I have to use quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b, so negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, put down my parentheses squared, b goes in there, minus 4 times a times c. A is 2, c is 1, all over 2 times a, which is 2. All right, cleanup time. I need to know what this is, and this is. All right, so I have x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, let's extend that a little farther, 8 squared is 64, minus 4 times 2 times, I shouldn't put down the minus, I should say negative 4 times 2 times 1 is negative 8, all over 4. Clean this up. X equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 8 is 56, all over 4. Okay, so remember what I have to do now. I have to ask myself, is root 56 simplifiable? So I don't know it by heart, but I'm going to see if I can simplify 56 into 2 radicals. So where's my list up there? Okay, 49, 64 would come next. 49 does not go into 56. 36 does not go into 56. 25 doesn't, 16 doesn't, 9 doesn't, 4 does. It is simplifiable. So 4 goes in there. If you're not sure, you could always do in your calculator. Let me go over here. 56 divided by 4, enter, and you can see that it's 14. So this is 2 root 14. So now I want to replace the 56 with the root 56 with the 2 root 14. X equals negative 8 plus or minus 2 root 14 all over 4. All right, I need to look at 1, 2, 3 numbers and see if anything goes into all 3 of those. There is a number that goes into all 3 of those. 2 does. 2 goes in here once. 2 goes in here twice. 2 goes into here negative 4 times. So I have x equals negative 4 plus or minus. I have 1 root 14, or I can just write a root 14 because there's one of them right there, all over 2. So there is my simplest radical form answer, my exact answer, exact. And now let's get our decimal answers. All right, so I'm going to do negative 4 plus root 14, enter, divided by 2, enter. And I get negative 0.13 is my first answer. And then I have to do negative 4 minus root 14, enter, divided by 2, enter. negative 3.87. And there's my decimal answers, rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay, we have 2 more problems to do. It's practice, right? Just to make sure we're there. So it's more like what you would see on an assessment. It says, give the solve each equation, give the exact answers, and answers rounded to the nearest hundredth, and it'll say if necessary, because that doesn't always happen. All right, so here's our first one, and this is what I want you to say to yourself. Can I solve it by square rooting? No, there's an x squared and an x. Can I solve it by factoring? And I say, okay, is there a GCF? No. Do I know 2 terms that multiply to give me negative 3 and add to give me negative 2? I do. So I don't have to use quadratic formula on this. So those 2 numbers are negative 3 and 1. Divide by a, which is 1. I get x minus 3 times x plus 1 equals 0. So I get 2 solutions. X equals 3, x equals negative 1. All right, could you use quadratic formula? Yes, but why on earth would you want to? All right, let's try this next one right here. So I say, okay. Can I solve it by square rooting? No, there's an x squared and an x. So then I say, okay, can I factor it? Is there a GCF? Do they have anything in common? No. So then I say, okay, do I know 2 numbers that multiply to give me 3 and add to give me 2? This time, I don't. It's not factorable. Where? It doesn't mean it's not solvable. It just means I have to use the quadratic formula. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. X equals the opposite of B, so negative 2. Plus or minus the square root of, B is going to go inside those parentheses, 2, minus 4 times A and C are going to go in those, 1 and 3. All over, make sure the all over goes all the way from the negative 2 to the parentheses on the 3. 2 times A, which is 1. Time to clean up this, and this. X equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 12 all over 2. Keep going. I need to simplify 4 minus 12. So I have x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 all over 2. So now I realize, wait just a minute, I see the square root of a negative number, and that's what my job is, to simplify that next. I see the square root of a negative number. Try putting the square root of negative 8 in your calculator. Second, square root negative 8, enter. Error, non-real. That means that this doesn't have any real solutions. So this has no real solutions. All right, that's it for quadratic formula. Next is quadratic applications, using this in Word.